Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of KashCraft. My name is KashMuney and this is episode 31. I am stood in front of the circus tent because today we are going to be finishing it. Last episode we finished up our main room. I did a little act going on, cleaned up some features and really made this place shine, and all we have left to do is this room right here. Now you may be wondering, what are we going to do in this room? Well, it is going to be a sort of performance room. It's going to be some of the other acts going on, maybe a magic show, maybe some acrobats, something where people can walk around and go to different tables and see what's going on. So how's that sound for today? Let's get started. We have so much to get done. I mean, this space is completely empty. It took me 2 episodes to put this together, 2 episodes to put the other room together. This one we are doing in 1 episode. That means we get to grind today. So our plan is going to be building the basics first. I mean, we always have our wooden trim kind of going around the sides of the tent, just showing that it has supports. Then we're going to build our center pole and our lines going up to the top. And then it's doing the floor, adding the stands, and adding the accent that we want. I do love what our oak beam does to the circus though, just making it feel realistic. It represents the continuation of the physics of our circus, where we have the side flaps kind of transition into the top fabric. There was presumed to be something in here to support that, and now we're finally adding that. We do need to cover up our frames that we can see from the inside. I love them, but I don't want to see random tuff or wool blocks just shining through the tent. And there we go. We have a little bit more structure to this space and it feels a bit more defined. We do need to add the ropes going up to the top though and lighting up the space. It's really just going to be a copy of what's in here, but with a little bit more lights, and it's going to look great. Why don't we roll a time lapse for this? That sounds like fun. I feel like that time lapse wasn't as satisfying as I wanted it to be, but still we have our lights in and the space is actually feeling more alive. I do think now would be a good time to add our center pole, just, show how this tent is being held up, because, we can't just have floating tents. There we go. And then at the bottom, just something like that. And there is our center pole. Plus, we should probably fix this back wall right here. We can't just have something blank and nothing right here. So we're going to add another elephant because, elephants are the best. There we go. There's a little elephant standing on the shelf up there. And there's the rest of our top cleaned up. We probably will add some decorations later on, but I want to get the rest of this place filled in before we do that. Otherwise, let's get started on this floor. I want to get this figured out. Before, this was just a blank canvas. Now we're adding the background, and then we're going to add the fun details. This pink ring represents where our main performance area is going to be, and then outside is going to be our stands. So right now I just have a ton of blocks that we are going to be using to create a sort of gradient for our floor. Going for lighter in the middle to show where people are traveling the most versus the corners where it's darker and maybe a little bit less light shining on here, isn't as traveled as much, things like that. Just trying to tell a story with our floor and add a bit of life and realism to it. You know what? Let's do another time lapse work on this floor. Roll it. So I ran out of rooted dirt in the middle of the build, so I had to go get more. And I know acacia trees have rooted dirt, or they're not acacia trees. What are they? Azalea trees. I knew it began with an A, but I know under them there's a ton of rooted dirt. Look how far down I am. That's a tree up there. I'm literally at the deep slate level, and we're legit 70 blocks down and still going. How much rooted dirt am I going to get from this? I mean, I know the rooted dirt goes down to a lush cave, but this is a deep lush cave. That was kind of crazy. We finally have our background to our space. Now we can actually start filling in some of the details. I think first we're going to start with our stands. We need something to fill this space, a place for our guests to sit. They're not going to be as big as the ones in here. I mean, A, it's a smaller space. B, we want people to be walking around, and so having less seats kind of encourages that. But anyway, let's get started on these stands. Like I said, these are going to be very similar to what we had before, and that's because it's good to have a bit of consistency consistency between our two rooms. Yes, we want these to still feel different, and they will, but making sure this has shared features helps us feel a bit more connected and like one circus. And there's our first set of stands in yellow this time, but otherwise when we're making our stands, it's just about following the outside of this curve and placing our little spots for our seats, having our stairs somewhere along the way for, you know, the people to get up, adding some flooring to this place, adding in the second place for our seats, adding our back wall and with our trapdoors, and finally our seats, plus little signs on the front just to kind of cover up some of the wooden stuff. And there's a second set of stands. We'll just keep on going with our third section, the white section. And hi Enderman. Hey look, my twin showed up. Here is the fourth section. There's number 5, number 6, and there are our 2 end stands. And that makes these complete. I wanted to just spruce it up a little bit at the bamboo, and I think it looks really good. And we do have some spotlights behind just to light up this space. We want to make sure we have no mobs. I mean, a creeper here would be a bit of a disaster. Anyways, I want to add a little control panel thing right here, something like this, a nice place where we can have some lights and some other like panel stuff, just control the sounds, the other spotlights scattered around here. We have our little stand, and then it's just about going up here and placing in our electronics that are going to be for our show. And then we can add our little lights to the back. Also, I can't get over how loud the anvils are. Like everything's so quiet and ASMR, and then you just place an anvil and it's bam. And there's all of our equipment, a bunch of lights, wires, random stuff going on, but it feels like a control panel. And we have one more thing to work on before we have the basics done. That is just adding some lights and speakers kind of around our circus, just little devices to play into the story we have going on, except the happy gas is not being very cooperative. There we go. We can finally get into the fun parts of this room, the parts that are going to make it really shine. And to start off, we're going to do the main attraction, our magician. Our magician is going to be putting on a magic show, and believe me, it is going to be magical. This is going to be a thrilling, somewhat death-defying act, and it is definitely going to shine. We're going to start with a little box kind of like this with some trapdoors around the edge for flair. We can add some precious ores on the side as a little bit of decoration. And yeah, we're using diamonds for this. We're going all out. Add a bit of a roof to this thing, and there's a little box. Now for some of the dangerous aspects, we get to add some saws. Why saws? Why not? It's fun to raise the stakes of our show a little bit, right? Although doing builds like this means I'm constantly running between my storage room and this thing over there, and it does not help that they're like 100 blocks apart. Okay, so there's our dangerous act. On another note, we're going to add a little demonstration table up here for people to come watch some acts, some up-close magic, you could say, to go with that theme we were talking about earlier. And there we go. There's our little act, but it is not done. I want this to feel very immersive. I want it to be like you walked in on the middle of the performance, right when the big reveal is, when the door opens and it turns out the magician's not there. They somehow escaped this terrible fate, and usually there's some sort of magical spell burst or like smoke associated with that. So we are going to replicate that with our act right here. We're going to be doing this with a bunch of glass. I have a bunch here, and we're going to create a just sort of explosion upwards. Our magic's going to be most dense right in front of the door, so we're just going to like spam glass panes to create a very, dense looking effect. And this is definitely tough. I haven't really worked with this sort of effect before, so it's a lot of figuring it out as I go. It's going to be shooting upward, and I want different like tendrils of smoke. So right now we have our initial explosion, and from there we just need to separate it into our different tendrils. I think we're going to have one out to the side, like right here-ish. Uh-oh. Whenever I hear lightning, I have to go straight to bed because I have fire tick on in this world, and the circus is made out of flammable materials, so I don't want the circus to burn down because of a rogue piece of lightning. I cannot tell if this is going to look amazing or not amazing. It's such a difficult technique, just trying to create this amazing shape out of like glass. I think by the end of this, I'm going to be a Minecraft parkour glass master. I don't know if that's a thing, but if it is, you better watch out. Okay, we're gonna try that for our rough draft and go from there. Let's see how it looks. Oh, I really like that. It's really cool. It's a little bit misshapen. I feel like it's a little bit like thick right here and thin right there. Yeah, I think it's best to just break up this giant mass right here. Of course, toss in a few end rods. I call that a successful first tendril. Let's try another. You know, normally I like to have a plan when creating my builds, but today's just vibes and it is working. I like that tendril too. I think we have room for one more kind of shooting like backward a little bit, or like kind of arcing around maybe. That would be cool. Anyways, to explain what's going through my head when I'm actually creating this, I try and pick a path that I want this glass to follow. Like this one is going to be shooting like this way a little bit, and like I said, I'd like it to arc back a tad. So to do that, I will use the solid blocks to define the sort of path. That way we have a really good idea of what's going on, and I use the glass panes to complement the path, kind of smooth it out, help it feel like a continuous magic burst. And then it's important to have little like floating pieces off to the side. This just helps it feel like the magic is almost like a fire, like it's shooting off like random pieces here and there. But once I get far enough, I stop using solid blocks, and transition to using some of the gray and white variants of glass. But yeah, you can kind of see the shape, like it goes up and then curves out a bit. I feel like it does need beefed up a bit, like down here and smoothed out towards the top. The main idea is there. We just got to figure out the small details. And this process is doing a lot of trying stuff out and then going back and checking. Like after making those changes, yeah, I'm liking that more. I think we need to still beef it up at the bottom and then just add some offshoots down here, because right now we have like a lot of offshoots right here, but literally none down here. After enough repetitions, we get to something I like, and then it's just about going in, grabbing our end rods, and putting a couple in here to light up the whole structure. Let's see, I think we're going to add one like small branch right here, just kind of filling this space because it feels a bit empty. And after a lot of messing around, this is what we get. I decided to add a fifth tendril just in the middle. It felt a bit empty, just having 4 going off to the side and nothing going up, but this is looking so cool. The magic feels like it's coming out of it, and the magic honestly feels like its own thing. It actually works out really well. I mean, if you're going to have a magic act, then the magician needs a distraction, and this is the distraction to that act. But if you're in the middle of the circus, you just look over and see this like explosion. It just draws you in, like, what is going on here? And then you see it and you're like, whoa, this makes me so happy, like so happy. And then I want to go ahead and just add a sort of ring around our magician set, visually give it its own space it exists in, which I think is really going to help. I guess it makes the act feel a bit more official, like there's a spot for it on the floor, like this is its, I don't know, stage you could call it. And there we go, something nice and simple. I think I want to do something over here, but for another act. And that is going to be our strongman spot. They're lifting this heavy bar. Credit to KashCraft for a good weight bar. I was struggling with it, and this is a perfect design. But otherwise, we just have some other weights around, and our strongman's really going to impress the audience with their strength. I also did change the floor over here. The black and gray gradient that we had going on in here just was not cutting it. Copying this over here just looked weird, so I went with something a little bit different, and I'm liking it a lot more. But okay, we have one more spot for an act, on the ground at least. Let's get that built. And here is our act. It is for our silk performer slash contortionist. If you remember, when we made our dressing rooms, we had this room right here, very nature-based for our silk performer slash contortionist, so it's only fitting that we have an act for them. It's definitely tree-inspired and has a way to work up the different stands, you know, with different poses and fun acts for the audience, and I really like it. All of our acts are really cute and give this space a lot of energy. But I was looking at this and realized that our magician is performing to the control panel, which doesn't really seem fitting. So we are actually going to tear this down, and we're going to move bits and pieces of it to the sides. We have these like weird gaps right here, so I think just having some lights and some control stuff would be perfect to just tuck into these corners. Here's what it looks like when we've removed that little stand and added it to these 2 corners. It's nice and cute. We just have like the little equipment again, but it's much more compact and out of the way and fills up the space really nicely. But let's add our stands real quick. And there we go. And now we have our magician actually performing for an audience. Okay, so we are very close to being done. I just want to add one more act, and that is going to be our acrobats up at the top. We are going to have a tightrope act going between the center pole of this section of the tent and our little curtain thing right here. Because we're going to have something in the air, and you know, that's pretty eye-catching, we are going to not make this super flashy. Otherwise, we run the risk of taking over the details of the space and taking away from like the magic burst and some of the other acts going on. So we have our little platform up there, kind of rickety, but honestly, I like it. The circus has been here for a while, you know, it could probably use some upgrades. And there's our little safe space for our acrobats. And then I do want to add some little props just to, you know, add to this theme of this being a tightrope. The first that I think would be really fun is having a little bike up here. You know, something that our actors can ride across the tightrope. Just a little something like this. It's a little big, but it gets the idea across. And then on our other side, I think it'd be fun to have some little like containers with stuff. And to do that, we can push a composter onto a armor stand with a helmet, and it looks like some sort of gears in there. And we could do the same over here to get some more gear. Otherwise, I just wanted to add some little like pots here and there. And then lastly, the space feels really dark up here, so we're just going to get rid of one chain on either side and replace it with an end rod. That way it kind of looks like we have a connector anchoring our tightrope to either side, and it really brightens up this space and draws attention to it. But otherwise, we can consider this room done. It's crazy how it went from just something very basic to being done in one episode. I mean, the magician's display is absolutely insane. This glasswork is so cool, and being able to see it from the other side of the circus is also like awesome. It feels like I was able to apply all the lessons from building the circus interior in this room and make it turn out like the best it possibly could. But oh my gosh, that means our circus tent is done. That just blows my mind, and it turned out so well. Like, our main room is so amazing. It's so dramatic. It feels circusy. It feels exciting. Our dressing rooms are awesome, and this is my favorite storage system ever. And of course, our side room is just magical. Quite literally, it turns out. Genuinely, when I started this circus, I was worried about the interior. I was worried it wouldn't, you know, uphold expectations, but it definitely does, and it looks so cool. Even outside, you can see the spotlight, and it just sort of draws you into the magic of the circus. But from here, we have some big plans. We still have to do the entire exterior, and believe me, that is going to be awesome as well. But this is such a big milestone. Of course, we do need to make our frame for today, and it is going to go right here next to the entrance. I spent a while trying to figure out a good design for it. I mean, we're trying to sum up the entire interior of the circus, which is a tough thing to do. I mean, let's be honest, what's one of the most iconic things about our circus? It's going to be our elephants. You can find them everywhere, so I think it's only fair we have an elephant for our frame for the interior of the circus. Just something like that, with tusks, of course. And then I just wanted to add some nice stars in the background with some bamboo trapdoors and things like that. And there we go. There is our frame for the interior of the circus. I think it sums up what we have going on very nicely. But anyways, everyone, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for being part of this journey. We still have a lot to do, but we have done so much already. If you enjoyed this build as much as I do, go ahead and like and subscribe. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.